Welcome to the 149th episode of BFI Educates. Volunteers for Israel's mission is to provide American volunteers to volunteer with the IDF and also perform archaeological volunteering in Israel. We're delighted today to have a number of distinguished guests, starting with Karen, who is the head of Sar-El, the big boss, and she's brought along some folks with her. And I just wonder, Karen, if you can just introduce the two other folks that you have along with you today. If you can unmute yourself for a second.
Hi, good evening, everybody. So it's great to be here. So we have some nice guests with us. We have Brigadier General Ronen Cohen, who is the Chief Logistical Officer of the IDF. We have Major Enaf Leket. She's a major in charge of all the Sar-El unit. We have Joanna, that's in charge of the program coordinator in Sar-El. So we are really happy to join you this evening.
Great. Well, thank you for coming along today. We have several continents represented for today's program. I have no particular announcements this time. Alana, do you have anything that you wanted to put on the line?
Just my regular announcement. If you're interested in VFI Plus programs, we still have a couple spots left in VFI Plus Advanced. I'd be happy to talk to you about it, and we'll put my contact information in the chat.
Great. I guess there is one short one, and that is we are invoicing for the upcoming VFI Plus archaeology tour in the fall. And so anybody who has received an invoice and has any issues or questions, my phone number is on the email, and you can also speak with Ilana. But we are advancing the process a little bit due to pressures of business and having to make hotel arrangements and whatever. So if any issues, we're available. At this point, I'm going to ask Julia if she could not say hello and introduce our guest.
Hello, everybody. Great to see you again. Ronen Cohen, thank you so much for coming. Actually, truly, I thought Ilana will be introducing. Ilana, could you please do that? Because I don't have Ronen's bio in front of me. Do you have it?
Okay, I don't.
Okay.
I have some of it up. So since 2020, Brigadier General Ronen Cohen has served as the Chief Logistics Officer of the IDF. He began his Army career as an enlisted fighter in the 932nd Battalion in the Nachal Brigade. In 2016, he was appointed the Commanding Logistics Officer of the Homefront Command, during which he participated in two major events, including the Sar-El parking lot in Ramat HaChael and the Waves of Fires in Israel. In 2018, he was appointed the Commanding Logistics Officer of the Northern Command.
Great.
Okay. Thank you so much. And well, I will share just 1 minute of personal connection to you, Ronen. The daughter of one of my best friends, her name is Guy Aviv. She knows you. I don't know if you know her, but she's a logistics officer right now, and you are the hero. So thank you so much for coming. I've heard your name, having a coffee with her mom, and I'm so pleased to have you on our Zoom project. And actually, I did not know myself that the whole amazing work Sar-El volunteers are doing for the IDF, it's under the logistics corps. So in a way, you are the great boss of them all. So again, for coming.
When you are in Ilana said it sounds very impressive. I try to be modest when I will talk, okay?
Great.
All right, so you don't have to reintroduce yourself then. I said all of it.
Okay. So as Ilana introduced me, my name is Brigadier General Ronen Cohen, and I'm the head of the Logistic Corps of the IDF. I will start with a short brief about what is happening in the Israeli army, what we are doing in the Logistic Corps, and a little bit about the Israeli society on those days. I will let you ask me questions. The questions will be on the chat, and I will answer them all at the end of my brief, okay? At the last few months, we had several terror attacks on Israeli cities. unfortunately. We are trying to avoid the next war. We are trying to avoid terror attacks. We are not welcome them with happy, but unfortunately, every few years or months, we have to face them. And we deployed an amount of battalions on Judea and Samaria. It's not easy. It's tough there. There are about 25 to 26 battalions that are working for the last 4 months in Judea and Samaria. So it's not easy for the soldiers during the summer. Some of them are deployed along the border with Judea and Samaria. Some of them are doing missions. At least once a week, we have we call it an engagement with the enemy. Luckily, we are keeping our soldiers safe, but I'm happy to say, and I'm proud to say, that our commanders and soldiers know their mission. They are looking back at the Israeli cities and country, and they can see that what they are doing, they are keeping our civilians safe and letting Israel keep on prosper and having a regular life. So this is what we are doing today. Along that, we are preparing for war. This is our business. We are not naive. Even though Israel is a very prosperous country, we know that we are living in the Middle East, and it can surprise us each day. So the army is preparing. We are building the forces for the next war. We are learning a lot from what is happening in Russia, Ukraine, and Europe. And the main thing we learned from Russia, Ukraine, is that you have to have the ability to defend yourself without the need to regard on other countries. We learned that even though we are living in 2022, the maneuvering on the field, the crimes of war, has not passed from us. And we can see in Ukraine that they have almost about 20,000 casualties there till now, even in the Russian side. The world is keeping their routine like nothing is happening. So we are learning a lot from Ukraine and Russia. It affects our plans for the next years, how to build the forces to the next war. Of course, we are protecting all the borders from the south to the north and preparing ourselves for any challenge that will come. And after saying that, our units are still training and preparing for what will come. About the Israeli society, you know what, I will start with the logistic corps, I will end with the Israeli society. We have several missions and enterprises that we are doing those days. The first thing, one of my big challenges of the last year is the Army nutrition. The Army nutrition haven't changed in the last 10 years, and we found ourselves handling thousands of soldiers at the age of 18 that recruited in the Army. Until they joined the Army, they enjoyed the prosper of the Israeli economy. They can choose what to eat and where to eat. And when they are recruiting the Army, we actually telling them, you have no choice. You have only the Army and nutrition. So we started a plan. We called it the Kitchen Revolution. That's the name of the plan. We invested until now about 200 million shekels. We started with the combat units. About 70,000 soldiers are serving under the combat units. And we change how they're eating, what they are eating, We change our training for our cooks and so on. So this is my first mission that I'm doing in this year. The second thing is preparing the reserve units and their warehouses. Some of you took part of it as a volunteer in working in warehouses in the Yamachim, as you know, treatment the kit bags and APCs and tanks. So this is the next, the second thing we are doing. The third thing, we are increasing the volunteer project to kids with special needs. It's something that we are giving back to society. We are giving to all the kids with special needs the ability and the right to wear the Israeli uniform and to volunteer at least once a week. We have over 1,000 kids with special needs that serve in the army today. They are coming to the units, working with our soldiers, and they are giving a special lesson to our soldiers. When our soldiers look at those kids, they learn something about dealing with life. They're learning to appreciate what they have. They are learning to appreciate their abilities. So it's a very special project we are doing. We also took all our NCOs and officers, the parents that have special kids with special needs, and we build a community to those parents. We call it a son in the pockets. Son in the pockets meaning that everyone, no matter what condition they are, is having something that lightening their life. And we call it son in the pockets. So this is the third thing we are doing. The fourth thing is we are preparing the logistic units to war as well. We change the way we train. We change the way we do drills. We change the structure of the logistic units in order to give or to prepare ourselves to the next challenges of the modern war. We learned about, again, from the European-Ukrainian war. We studied the logistics of the Soviet forces and the Ukrainian forces. We wrote till now 6 articles about it, of how they are doing logistics, what are the mistakes that each side did. We publish it in the army, and we change the way we are doing trainings and the logistics structure, and even our doctrine has changed according to it. We opened the sky for international meetings and courses. Last week we finished the International Integrated Logistic course. We had officers from 16 states, majors and lieutenant colonels from 16 states. We are doing it after about 3 years of not be able to connect with the world without regards to Zoom and Google meetings. And we have began to bring to Israel, let's say, some visits that helps us learn from other nations, and we are going to learn from other nations. About the Sar-El project and volunteers, if I'm taking it further, the volunteers project in my corps is one of the biggest value projects we have. We have about 5,000 volunteers a year from all the ages, all the countries, and all the variety of society. We are letting the volunteers work in the warehouses. We started a new project. We call it Ta'ima. It's Tasty Mom. Tasty Mom means we are taking volunteers and we are putting them on posts with companies, warriors, and they are cooking for them. So we have about 5,000 volunteers in all the projects of the IDF volunteers. This is a small taste of my corps. And about Israel. Every time I speak about Israel, I'm getting excited. We have a wonder here in the Middle East. It's a wonder because when you are doing a zoom out on the map of the Middle East and you are seeing what is happening with the borders of Israel, we are living in heaven. We have one of the prosperous nations in the Middle East. I'm proud to say that I'm part of one of the moral and justified army in the world. Our youth, as all the Israelis, have their own opinions. They ask a lot. They question a lot about what we are doing in the Israeli nation. And even though we are in 2022, the youth wants to do more in their service. They want to join the special units. They want to join the intelligence units. They want to be officers. They want to command. They want to be engineers. We are one of the biggest high-tech hubs in the world. Even though it's a very hard time for the high-tech industry, we are still one of the biggest high-tech hubs in the world. And when I'm flying, I get a chance once a week to fly from the place I live. I live in the Golan Heights, near the border with Syria. So in order to pass the traffic, I'm flying from the north to the center of Israel. So when I'm flying along the coast of Israel, and I can see the uprising of buildings and towers along the coast of Israel, I'm 49 years old, and I've seen Israel in other situations. I remember Israel in 1990, when the world decided that Israel will have an embargo and we cannot bring anything here. And I remember my parents waiting 10 years to get a phone to their house. And I lived in a house that my parents, because they came in the 50s to Israel, at times that there was no food in Israel, I lived in a house that every Friday they bought food like there's no tomorrow. And they cooked like there is a battalion coming to our house. And now, I look at my children, my daughters, and I can give them whatever they want. They are getting a best education. They are learning a lot about Israel through walking in Israel and traveling in Israel. So this is why I stayed in the army till now. I'm serving in the army for at least 30 years now. And I'm doing it because I think I'm part of one of the biggest, or one of the most interesting thing we have here in the Middle East, and that wonder called Israel. And now about you. You are our friends. We've been to the States 2 months ago, Karen, Enav, and I, at the Jewish community. We did the Sar-El convention in Manhattan, and we talked with the children in the Bronx, the Jewish students at the 11th grade, about 300 students. And I'm telling you exactly what I told them. We are not saying to no one, do Aliyah. It's your choice. We are not saying it. But we are definitely saying, we are letting you be a part of that wonder that calls the IDF. To come here for 7 weeks, to wear the uniform, to be in a unit, to work without soldiers, to feel them, to touch them, to be a part of that wonder Yes, it's very hot in here. In some places, the humidity is unbearable. You will not find in most of our units probably modern bases. The conditions will not be as good as you will see in camps in the army of the United States, for example. But I have to tell you that wonder is ours. So it's okay that it's not neat. It's okay that sometimes you will see buildings or the construction from the British Empire time in some of our bases, but it's ours. So I invite you all to come here to be a part of that beautiful project that's called Sar-El, to feel a little bit of the Israeli society, the Israeli army, and to be a part of it. That's it. If you have any questions for me, I will more than be happy to answer. I have a question that regards to the field rations, the MREs. First of all, it's interesting because last week we talked about it with my commander, and I told him that I think we are the last army in the world that are still using cans, the invention of Napoleon. So we started a work, a big research on how to change the Israeli MREs on the IDF. We cannot use what the American use or what the European use. There is the Israeli taste. So we have to change to something that we are developing. Let me try to read everything here.
If there are no other questions in the chat, also
is the 7-week program for older teens special? I didn't understand that question. If someone can, the one that asked it.
You were mentioning that you had a 7-week program when you talked to the teens. You said come to Israel and be in the IDF, wear the uniform for 7 weeks. Is that a Sar-El program or a special IDF program where older teens can come and volunteer?
All the volunteer projects are doing through Sar-El. There is no other.
It was a Sar-El program. Okay.
It's all by Sar-El. I have here a question about what is the IDF strategy to ensure adequate supplies in the event of multi-front war? You have to be part of the Israeli army in order that I can answer it. But we are preparing ourselves with stock levels to the next war. So I think this is the only thing I can say about it. I know that the American army has kosher MREs for their forces, but I'm talking about the taste. The Israeli culture of nutrition is different from all over the world. We tried to use the American MREs in pilots in Israel. It didn't work well, unfortunately, so we are trying to develop our own modern MREs.
General, I'm particularly interested in the lessons learned from the Ukrainian experience, particularly how it applies to armored warfare, and the fact that the current warfare is basically an artillery duel at long distance. I don't think, is there any place in the Middle East that looks like there, which is really flat for miles?
No, it's not flat for miles. in the first 5 days of the war, the Soviets have passed 120 kilometers, it's about 80 miles, in one maneuver. Wow, it's not short, and it's it's impressive to hear about it, but what stuck them afterwards was the logistics. They didn't plan the logistics well, and after 5 days of maneuvering, they stopped. And the Russian problem has started. The Ukrainians used the civilians in order to stop the logistic convoys. For example, we have several movies that shows the first convoy that the Russians deployed it to Russia was 68 kilometers length. It was one of the biggest gifts to the Ukrainian army, of course. The second thing the Ukrainians did is that they deployed its civilians and they told them, don't mess with the tanks or the RPCs, wait for the fuel tanks and stop them on the roads. So there's a lot of examples of what is happening in Ukraine, but I have to say that one of the things we are seeing in the Ukrainian army is the spirit, because nobody believed that the Ukrainians will survive for 150 days. Nobody believed against Russia. Nobody believed. But they are standing and they are fighting Russia. A small country with a regular army, non-advanced. They are not superpower, but the spirit of the Ukrainian nation and the army stands for them. So we have a lot to learn from them in that area. I'm happy to say that Israel has the same spirit that helps us during all the wars till now. Okay. If you have any other questions, I will.
Yeah, if anyone has any questions, please feel free to unmute yourself. I see Harry, if you wanted to ask your question. If it wasn't already answered, which I think it was.
Yeah, it's in the Gaza region, all of the underground tunnels that they've been putting in for years and years and loading that area under schools and hospitals with their military arsenal, hundreds of thousands of missiles. That's going to be so difficult for you wonderful people to try and deal with that and avoid collateral damage. They hide behind children and hospitals, and that's almost impossible without sustaining losses. And I pray for you every day that in the event that proceeds, you're going to be faced with conceivable problems in Syria, fronts in, luckily now, you have a wonderful relation with Jordan. That's been good. And so we pray for you to have all of the assistance. And hopefully as an American, we have to do more for you. You're doing so much for us. Thank you, General.
Thank you very much for those kind words.
There is a question by Harry. Can you read the question? Or Harry, maybe you want to ask yourself? Okay. It says, does the IDF have different ways to keep weapons in stock than the US and Europeans, as they are becoming short because of the war in Ukraine?
Every soldier in the Israeli army is having his own weapon. I don't know how it is working in the Ukrainian, but we have the Israeli weapon industry, and we have warehouses with weapons. I cannot say more than that. I don't think that will be the problem of the IDF in the next war. Okay, I don't think that that will be the problem. Of course, we don't want the war in Israel to, or in the Middle East to cease to 150 days. We want to make it shorter because we want to keep on living here. And we know that there will be a price on each week that you will keep on that war. So one of the Israeli strategic is to making the war shorter than we did before.
Do you think the use of that high-tech anti-tank weaponry supplied by the U.S. affects the way the Israeli Merkava usage would be going forward in armored battalions?
I can only say that 4 weeks ago, when we started the International Integrated Logistic course, when I gave my lecture, I said to the officers, it's funny what I'm saying, but I'm serious when I'm saying it. I told them, we have the best tank in the world. So some of the officers left. And I said, you know what? We also have the best APC in the world. So they laughed again. And I said, you know the reason why? And they said no. And I told them, it's not because we have the best metal on the tank, so we have the best weapon system. It's because we are one of the fewest army in the world that produce their own tanks and APCs. We are not buying them. We are not buying them from contractors like the states are doing. The Abrams tank, that is a wonderful tank, is not produced by the American army, but the Merkava tank is produced by the Israeli army. And when we are talking with the officers, engineers about the Merkava tank, they do not concern what is the cost of the Israeli tank and what is the profit of the Merkava staff that do it. Their own concern is that it will be safe, it will have the highest technology that they can put inside it, and now I can proudly say that the new tank, we are not calling it a tank, we are calling it a weapon system. It has so many systems on it that I can proudly say it's the best tank in the world. I'm serious.
Ronen, Marty has asked, how do you, I'm not sure what he means, how do you know that you have enough resupply for different types of wars you face? Does it keep you up at night thinking that you might not have enough drones, first aid kits, etc.?
This is why we have white hair. It's our concern. We are concerning all the time about the next war. We have two things that concern us. First of all, is preparing ourselves to the next war. And we're asking a lot of questions. Do we have enough supply? Did we train the units enough? Do we have enough trucks and so on? The second thing that concerns us, that gives us an extra white hair, is how do we concern our soldiers, our boys and girls? The way they eat, where do they sleep? How do we taking them from home and bringing them back home? So we are always handling concern. We are always thinking, what is the next project that we will do in order to keep those two on balance? Of course, our mission is to prepare to war, but we are looking on the routine and how we are giving our soldiers the best things that we can give in order we have a new saying that we call it the best experience of service. We want a soldier to enjoy the service.
I have a question. I guess the answer is no, but I will ask. are there any thoughts, maybe in the future at some point, to make the Army professional Army rather than mandatory?
There was a big discussion on it in Israel. The question that was asked is the Israeli army a professional army, or does it still have the same values since Ben-Gurion established the army? That is one of the special core melt of the Israeli society. And the answer is very simple. The Israeli society still needs the army to be the core wealth of the Israeli society. So we are still recruiting our soldiers by law. It's a mandatory service. We changed the way we are doing it. We changed the way of service, but we are still mandatory. And that question was delayed for at least the next 10 or 20 years.
Okay, thank you.
I just want to mention that. You have a question? Go ahead. Oh, okay. I just want to mention that I attended the farewell ceremony for Lieutenant Colonel Shai Shul in Harrisburg last week, and the United States gave him a commendation medal, which is not easy to get. And I'm really proud to see that he got a specific award from a 4-star general. Very nice. I'm sure he's on his way home by now.
Shai Shul has been replaced by a logistician. Is a major that will get the lieutenant colonel very soon. He's one of our best officers. Actually, we are sending 2 logisticians now to the States. One of them is the TLB officer in the States, and the second one is the Israeli the representative of the army in the United States as a logistician there. The TLB representative is called Lieutenant Colonel Moran, and the second one is Shai Drori, a major. And I'm proud to say that they are the first 2 logisticians that are traveling to the States to be an official assignment there. Shai Shul is from the Medic Corps, and he's been replaced by Moran Goldstein. Is a logistician. Infantry Paratroopers Brigade, the 35th Brigade, a logistician officer, and he was at the TLB command till the last month in a very special role.
Thank you. I noticed that Israel is aggressively active in Syria, mostly with airstrikes against positions near Damascus. What do you think would happen if Russia suddenly launched one of their little missiles and knocked out an F-16, an Israeli plane?
I'm a logistician. I'm not the Air Force Command, and I'm not the head of the army. I'm a logistician. I hope it will not happen, but who knows? We are living in the Middle East. Anything can happen here. So
there is another question which might be another thing you cannot answer, but the question by Alvin is, how does Israel protect its armed storage facilities? Are they underground?
Excuse me, I didn't hear you.
How do you protect the arms storages facilities? Are they underground?
It's a very complicated question. Yes and no. Okay.
Hey, I could not hear you. Something is wrong.
I said it's a very complicated question, and the answer is yes and no.
Excellent answer. Of mode.
Very detailed.
Yes.
So
can you wait? There's another question. Can you comment on developing AL systems? Owl systems?
AI. AI.
AI.
Okay, AI. Okay, now I
Yes,
understand.
we have a big project in the Army. It's one of our commanders' vision to make the Army more digital, more technological. And yes, we are using AI in several units. Unfortunately, we are not using it in the logistician corps yet, but we are moving to it.
Okay, there's a different question. What is the participation of the religious students in the IDF? Is the opposition to them serving just a few loud voices of opposition, or is refusing to service is widespread?
There's no problem in serving or volunteering for religious students or religious soldiers. In each unit we have religious, we have rabbinates from the brigade level above, so there's no problem in volunteering if you're religious. It's okay. The food is kosher, everything is fine.
Yeah, okay, that's theoretically, but practically, would you know that not every Orthodox student will do the military service? So how wide is this phenomenon?
Nothing has changed in that thing in the last 20 years, but I can say that it's growing up. We have 2,500 what we call Haredim that recruits the Army. It's increasing from year to year. They have their problems in their societies, those youths that are recruited in the Army. It's very hard for them, but they are doing it. And we are seeing more soldiers joining the Army. We have a special battalion, that the battalion is only for those religious guys. But if you want to serve in a regular unit, you can. We have in other units, companies, we call them Shachar companies, that you can recruit and join those companies in a regular unit. But you can ask that question on the Muslims and other part of the society in Israel. We are letting everyone in the Army to recruit the Army, everyone. Bedouins, Muslims, of course, Jews, and religious guys. If you do not want to join the Army and you are a Muslim, or if you are a religious guy, we will not make you do it. We will respect your religious and your request not to recruit the Army.
Is there an element of compulsory national service as a substitute for military service?
Excuse me? Can you ask that again?
Yeah, is there a compulsory non-military service?
Yes, you can join what we call the Shirut Leumi. It's a national service. If you are, let's say, a religious girl and you want to join and do your service, you can do it in a hospital, you can do it in a school. It is called a national service. You are not with uniforms, but it's like you are doing the Army service.
Yes, but it's not mandatory.
Not mandatory, no.
No, the question was about mandatory non-military service.
No, it's not mandatory, no.
Okay.
Question. I know about, I think the U.S. Sends around $3 billion a year of material to Israel. I guess most of that stuff comes to you.
No, I wish.
You
No.
wish.
Yes, I wish. We get aid from the American government. We use it for planes, for choppers, for ammunition, and some of it come to the logistics. So, but not most of it. I wish.
So you don't consider
If I had $3 billion a year, I will not have a white hair on my head. There will be no concerns.
We have two. I can see two new questions here. One is, what is the policy of women serving in frontline combat units?
Okay, it's one of the discussions today in Israeli Army. First of all, we have women serving in the borderline battalions. Some of the we have about 10 battalions that we have a mixed men and women service. But the biggest question that we had in the army is if women can recruit an infantry or an armor battalion, not a border battalion. So the Medic Corps gave the minimum rules that you must have before you recruit the army. I haven't seen yet a woman or female that is recruiting an infantry battalion as a warrior. You can see truck drivers. You can see, of course, at the headquarters of the battalion, women. You can see officers. 60% of my officer course are women's. 35% of my company commanders are women. And I can tell you that they are better than the men. And I'm saying it seriously. I can prove it. But the problem we have is what is going on after the company commander role, when they want to be a major and a lieutenant colonel, and they want to build up a family. So they cannot serve. Some of them choose not to serve in the field units, and they're moving to staff roles. In my corps, if you are a female, you can do whatever you want. We have the supply center command is Brigadier General Mirav. She's a friend, and she's a woman. And she was one of the toughest officers we have in the army. I have colonels, I have lieutenant colonels, I have majors, and they are better than us. I'm serious.
This is being recorded.
Okay.
Okay. Gail asked, isn't the mandatory enlistment of Israelis into the IDF, even with exceptions, one of the reasons that Israel has cohesive support of its citizens for the country's defense?
I didn't get you. Can you say,
I'll read it. Isn't the mandatory enlistment of Israelis into the IDF, even with the exceptions, one of the reasons that Israel has cohesive support of its citizens for the country's defense? I mean, you've all served in the army, but only 80% or 75%. But that many people who have served in the army certainly have an idea of what the country is all about as far as the defense of the country.
Yes, but it's not 0 or 1. It's not 0 or 1. I want to remind you that we have a big population of Arabs in Israel that are not recruiting the army. We have strong religious guys that do not recruit the army. So when you're taking out the Muslims and the religious guys, most of the Israeli youth are recruiting the army. It is true that there is a discussion in the Israeli society about the other groups that are not recruiting the army. But in my opinion, you have to know that there is not a 0 or 1 answer for that discussion. Because Israel is a very special place, and we are letting everybody live here. We have only in the north 300,000 Bedouins. The Bedouins are Muslims. Some of them are recruiting the army. You cannot force them to recruit the army because they have families in Gaza and Judah and Samaria. You cannot recruit a religious guy that believes that he cannot see women, that he has to eat special food. It is belief. You cannot do it. And this is why we understand that there will never be a 100% recruit to the Israeli army. And yes, it's a big question. So what are they giving to the Israeli nation? And I don't have a special answer for it.
Okay. Alvin asked, do the Israeli Army, Navy, and Air Force have separate logistics systems?
Yes and no. Some of on the basic level, they all have the same system. When I'm saying basic system, nutrition, transportation, equipment, they have the same system. But at the Air Force, they have different system of ammunition, different system of maintenance, and so is the Navy and the intelligence forces, because they are unique. The ground forces, because the ground forces are the big forces in the Israeli army, have the biggest percentage of all the army. Most of the logistics or the generic logistic things is building from the ground forces to those units. But not everything is like in the ground forces.
Okay, next question would be, Heiko, I didn't see it before. How much attention has IDF been paying to coastal defense along the Mediterranean Sea against amphibious assaults?
A lot. Before I started the conversation on the news, that there was the discussion of the gas tanks on the sea and how to protect them from Hezbollah and so on. And the Israeli army invested a lot in protecting those, we call it economic waters. So, yes, we are investing a lot in protecting the border at the sea border.
Okay. Valerie is asking, do Arabs receive any different consideration, background checks when volunteering to the IDF differently than Israelis? I guess she meant Jews.
I think they do. Everyone that recruits the army is having a background check, even if you are Jew. So I think they have the same background checks. I never checked it, but I think they do.
Okay. Carol asks, could you comment on how broadly educated in non-military areas the typical young IDF officer is?
Yes. I have several programs in educating our officers. If you are serving in a combat unit, after you are finishing the company commander role, I will send you to the university to learn a BA in logistics and economics. If you are not serving in a combat unit, you can learn at the university during your service. We are allowing it. And we will give you 1 day off in order to learn in the university. Most of the officers that are learning will get a scholarship from the army. And now I'm starting a new program at October at the Haifa University that I'm sending captains before they are starting their job as company commanders to have their degree in BA in logistics and economy. Most of our officers are BA graduated. Most of our lieutenant colonels and above are MA graduated. So we have one of our plans of education is very strong. We are giving the majors and lieutenant colonels management courses, and to my colonels, I give the director courses at the university, because, and I'm doing it for the NCOs as well. I have every year about 600 NCOs that are learning in several universities and colleges. I have my own college in my base in Tel HaShomer. In my college, we have about 200 NCOs and officers that are learning. So yes, we are investing a lot in educating our NCOs and officers.
Keeping with that topic, do you send your officers and NCOs to any NATO countries for further training?
Yes, of course, we are starting it now after 2.5 years of COVID. But yes, we have officers that travel into the States, to Europe, to learn, to participate in courses, to participate in training. I myself visited a lot of countries during my service, from a young captain till now. So yes, it gives a lot of motivation to our officers and our NCO to learn from other armies. So yes, we are doing it.
All right, thank you. Well, it's just a reminder by Alvin, Israeli logistics have come a long way since the supply of ammunition by the bullet factory. So yes, the bullet factory is the underground bullet factory, Machone Alon. So yes, indeed, such a long way. Okay, I see that we just ran out of questions, and thank you for your service, of course. I don't know if you have a few more minutes, and if in case people have more questions, that's when you can unmute yourself and just ask a question. Is it okay, Ronen? A few more minutes?
Yes,
Great.
Few minutes, yes.
Okay. So again, thank you so much. Ladies and gentlemen, any questions? Last chance. Okay.
Thank
Yes,
you so
I
much.
have a question.
Go ahead.
General, I'm retired, among my other activities, and retired communications officer, United States Air Force Auxiliary Communications. As part of your supply and logistics effort, do you also include, I'm assuming, spare parts and components? Does that also include your electronic items of electronic warfare, communications, things like that? Would that also fall under your jurisdiction?
Yes. In wartime, we are responsible to supply anything from blood, medic supply, batteries, communication, electronics, spare parts, ammunition, fuel, food, everything. Because in chain of supply, the main mission is to take something from point A and put it in point B. It doesn't matter what it is. And we have static logistics centers that everything is brought to them, and from there they are deployed to the combat units.
So when your units are in the field, the general model, and please correct me if I'm wrong, but there were, if I remember correctly, there's two general types of supply systems. That is, and what the Russians use is they say, well, this is what we expect you to use, so we're just going to issue you a certain amount of fuel, food, ammunition, things like that. Where there's other units, they would say, this is what we need. And so then you, as a supply and logistics, you are receiving those orders and getting the units what they need, when they need it, as they need it, in addition to pre-planning. Is that generally the way your system is set up to work?
because we are Jews, it's we are using both methods. It means that the unit demands, and we are deciding what they will get. Okay?
May I cut in for a moment?
Yes.
In the 1990s, I think it was 1995, we were in Israel on the pilots tour, and we were brought behind the scenes to where they were creating for the first time a new item called a drone. And we were told to be quiet about what we knew. So now everybody has the drones. So I'm hoping, I know you can't say yes or no, but I'm hoping with the same brilliance that created the drone, that you've got some other magic up your sleeve that will be useful, or hopefully not needed to be useful.
I hope so too. I hope so too, but I trust our ability to invent and to be creative on technology. And even though everybody have drones, the question is, what are you doing with the drones? And how can you use it? And yes, everybody use drones. We've seen it in the European War.
And now they're toys for kids.
Yes. Okay, if you have a last question, I'm more than happy to answer. And if not, I would say from here, good night, because it's 10 p.m. here in Israel. And for you, have a good noon or good rest of the day.
Mm-hmm. Well, General, thank you so much for your time and attention today. I think that we have a much greater sense of what is above us when we're lowly volunteers, that there's a whole hierarchy of other things happening around us, much of it invisible, thank goodness. And appreciate your time here. We have heard from a number of high-ranking officers, including generals, but I think you're the first active duty general that we've had a presentation from. So thank you very much again.
Thank you. Have a good day.
Thank
you.
Laila Tov. Okay.
Thank you
for the match. Bye, Laila Tov. תודה רבה. תודה רבה.
Bye, Laila Tov. תודה.
Yeah.
Julia, did you want to say something? Where'd you go?
No, I'm right here. I'm right here next to Ilana. I'm that small. Okay, ladies and gentlemen. So I'm very happy it happened. I'm so sorry that we had some Zoom or whatever it was issues, so people could not join. And I guess some people just gave up, and that's why we had less participants that I'm sure we were supposed to have. I'm totally positive that we have lots of people who didn't make it. Sorry about that, but technology is technology. And yes, that was definitely the first presentation of somebody who is now wearing uniform, which was quite exciting.
You always pick the best.
Pardon?
You always pick the best.
Well, actually, it was very little to do with me because it was Karen's idea. I've heard Ronen's name quite a few times before, but I wouldn't even think of approaching him as an active officer of this rank. And then Karen asked me, hey, would you like him to talk? And I was like, of course, can you arrange that? And she said, yeah, I'll talk to him. And that's how it happened. So thank you so much, Karen. I don't see you right now. I don't know if you're still here.
Yeah, she is. She's on the phone.
Okay. So anyway, I hope she can hear me and the phone at the same time. So thank you, Karen. And I would like to invite you, it's a totally off topic right now. We were talking about logistics and military and in a way the future of Israel, but I would like to invite you to my next presentation in 2 weeks from now. And we will be talking about Slovenia, which is one of the most beautiful and peaceful and at least for a tourist, not complicated parts of the world. So that's it. It's so much, it's like it's being relieved. When you go to Slovenia, things feel like, oh, things are so simple. Why do we always struggle around this part of the world? So I hope to see you all in Slovenia in 2 weeks and read the schmooze next week, right?
Could I interrupt and suggest another topic? I think a program dedicated to all the ways the IDF supports the broad education of its soldiers. When my wife and I were in Jerusalem a few years ago, every museum we went to, there were IDF recruits, hearing lectures on all of the features in all of these museums, ancient archaeology and everything. And then the good general just shared some more information with it. I think that could stand as a topic in its own right.
The education program for IDF soldiers. Yes.
Yeah, apart from the military, they get their military training, but it's very clear that there are a lot of other things happening.
I do have a friend I actually have two friends who were in their roles in the Army were to educate the soldiers. I'm wondering if I can ask one of them. I'm sure Julia knows more people than I do, but I do have a friend.
When we were in Israel, we saw an officer leading a discussion outside the old city walls, right by the old city hall in the corner there. We were Mount Herzl, and there were multiple groups of Israeli soldiers. I don't know if they recruits or recent soldiers. So it is a very interesting topic. It's in a sense like you had in World War II. There was a movie, Why We Fight. So maybe it's a